Hey guys, welcome to or welcome back to our very bookish channel. My name is Amanda and my friend Jenna and I run this channel together, and today we are going to be wrapping up all of the books we read in February, and it was a huge reading month for both of us. So I don't know what got into me. I don't know if I'm just trying to make up for all the reading time that I missed in January, or if I am just getting more into audiobooks lately. I'm just maybe in that mood or what. So technically this month I read a total of 12 books. One of them was a DNF, so I only got about a third of the way into that book before I DNF'd it. So I don't know if you can really count that one. And one of them was a very short novella, kind of like half a book, I guess. 3 of the books were audiobooks only, where I just listened to the audio. And then one of the books I physically read and then listened to the audiobook while I was in the car or doing chores around my house. So there was like 3 audiobooks and one that was a mixture. So definitely audiobooks helped me get my number up this month for sure. And then I also had a very large 750th page book that I actually started in January and didn't finish until February, so I'm wrapping it up in this February wrap up, but the majority of the pages of this book were physically read in January. So there's that. So the number of books I read seems really big, but the number of books that I actually physically sat down and read is not as big.
Hey guys, I'm here to talk about what I've read in February. I had a very successful February, much more successful than my January. I was not a fan of the books that I read in January, but I had the complete opposite experience in February. Not only did I get to more than I normally do, but I also really loved the books that I read. And I started off my month with an author that I fell in love with when I was sick over Christmas, and her name is Sophie Cousins. And the book that I read was This Time Next Year. This I took onto vacation with me, and it was like the perfect vacation read. It was very light, but I just love her writing. I love how she writes her characters, and she uses a lot of details. It's like she knows these people in real life. It's just something about how she writes about all of the details I just am in love with. So this one is about Minnie. You see it mostly from her perspective. You do meet in the beginning, I think it is, at some point you find out that when Minnie was born, her mom met another woman who was also in labor. And since Minnie's birthday is New Year's Day, there was a contest as to who will be the first baby to be born on New Year's Day. And it ends up being who she calls her birthday twin, because they were born minutes apart. And she always heard stories about this because her mom said that she told this woman what she was going to name her baby, but that woman stole the name and named her son Quinn. So Minnie ended up being Minnie. And what's really funny about that is her last name is Cooper, which is Minnie Cooper. Anyway, it's a very funny, light romance/fiction novel, and I just loved the story. She ends up meeting her birthday twin, and of course they end up falling in love. And she makes pies for a living. She's a baker. And at the end of the book, they actually have recipes, and those recipes weren't just any old pie. They were for chicken pot pies was one of them. And my boyfriend happens to love chicken pot pie. So for Valentine's Day, I ended up making the recipe at the end of the book, and she names it Chick Jagger Pie. So I have some footage, and though it's not the best footage, I wasn't really good at trying to hold the camera and also cooking. So there's that. And I did have some shortcuts. I bought already made dough, even though her recipe says you can do either, make your own dough. I didn't have time for that, but I do have some footage of the pie that I made from the recipe that's at the end of the book. I love when books do that. So here's the footage. My boyfriend did rave about the pie, and I had a lot of fun making it. I love when books have recipes. It's not the first time, but it's been a while since I had read a recipe in a book and then tried it. But I absolutely love this book, 5 stars. I am continuing on with Sophie Cousins. I love her books. If you saw our March TBR, I already have one on my March TBR. So definitely highly recommend this. It was such a great read.
So first I'm going to jump right into 2 arcs that I read and reviewed in February. And the first arc is Snow Globe. And I received a digital ebook copy of this story. I got it from NetGalley. And overall, I was just really disappointed. To be fair, I'm not the target age group for this book. This is a young adult, you know, like 12, 13, 14-year-old target group. And I do feel like the book was very appropriate for that age group. This is the first book of a duology by So Young Park, and it was praised as Hunger Games meets Squid Game. And I just feel like the book did not deliver that. But if you want more about this book, then please check out my ARC review of this book. I will post it up here, and I will also link it in the description below. The next ARC book that I finished that I loved so much was Empire of the Damned by Jay Kristoff. This is the second book in the Empire of the Vampire trilogy, and this is what the first book looks like. And I have raved and raved and raved about this book. It's a vampire story where vampires are very dangerous, very ruthless, very heartless creatures. There's also some shifters. There's also some magical elements in this. It's just a very good, very dark fantasy novel that I love. The writing's impeccable. If you want to know more about this book, then you can check out my ARC review of Empire of the Damned. I again will link it up here and in the description below.
Read. Next, I did 3 books for the Frida McFadden vlog that we did. We were super excited because The Teacher was coming out at the beginning of February, and we ended up reading 2 others along with this to do a vlog. I'm sure Amanda can link the vlog in the comments for this. I absolutely loved all 3 of the Frida McFadden that I read. So if you wanted to see more of our thoughts on that, I would suggest you go watch the video. We plan on doing another one. The Housemaid is Watching is going to be coming out in June. So I'm sure we're going to be reading other Frida books then. And also in October, I think it is, The Boyfriend comes out by Frida, and I am sure we're going to do another one then too. So check out the Frida video to see more thoughts on these.
So the next 3 books that I'm going to talk about are, of course, my Frida McFadden books. We did a Frida McFadden reading vlog. The next book I read, I read physically to start with, and then I switched to audiobook and back physically to audio depending on, you know, what I was doing at the time. And that is The Sanctuary of Shadow by Aurora Asher. This book was very highly anticipated. It is very pretty. It's got some nice sprayed edges, and this book was a little disappointing for me, I'm not gonna lie. I was kind of expecting a Night Circus type vibe, and I really didn't get that with this book. So you're following Harrow, and she is the female main character, and she's a young woman who has real magic, and she used to belong to a whole village of people that were like her, and they were all hunted down and murdered. She survived. She escaped to the circus where she hides. She can hide her abilities as a circus act, and she is kind of safe among these group of people. Then one day, the owner of the circus purchases another being that is magical, and he likes to purchase these people and collect them kind of to like put on the show for his circus. So he purchases this guy that's been captured that has magic, and friendship and relationship kind of form between Harrow and this guy. They both have their own secrets. They both have their own mysteries around who they are, and they both hide these things from each other intentionally and unintentionally. So you're kind of following their story of them getting to know each other and their love blossoming, and then, you know, them finding out each other's secrets. So unfortunately, there's really not much of a circus vibe. The romance in this book felt really insta-lovey and kind of juvenile. But there is spice in this book, but it just felt, it just, I don't know. I wasn't really into the romance. I wasn't really into these characters. And I kind of think the romance between Xaden and Violet has ruined me, because I just like, Rebecca Yarros just wrote those characters so good, and their story is so great. And I just really, I compare all romantic relationships in books to them, and like none of them, in my opinion, stand a chance. They just don't hold up to the Xaden and Violet romance. And to me, this romance fell flat. And yes, that's a high bar, but I'm not a romance reader. I don't like it when romance is the main plot. And a lot of this book, romance turns into the plot. A very slow burn ending, and I just not a fan of that. So I really don't feel like I'm gonna continue on with the series.
We had a blind date with a book this month. It was one of the ideas we had going into this year. We had done a book resolutions video, and one of the ideas for vlogs for this year was to do a blind date with a book. I had in my package this book, which is Tell Me Lies by Carola Lovering. And it also is a Hulu TV series. This book was really good, but the character in it, the male character, you see it between the female character, Lucy, and then the male character, Stephen. And he is just an awful, awful, awful person. So that part was kind of hard to get through, and it didn't necessarily end where I would want it to when it comes to his character. But I didn't let that bother me. I thought it was a very well done book, and I did enjoy reading this one. So I did have a successful blind date with a book. I was very concerned that I was going to get one I already read, or something I was going to hate, or had said I was never going to read. And instead I got one that was actually turned out to be really great. So you can also watch this video. She'll link that one as well.
For our February secret read, we did Blind Date with a Book, and I ordered my book from a very, very cute Etsy shop. I'm gonna link all the information below if you want to order your own book from this Etsy shop. The owner of the shop is so sweet, and she's actually giving all of you guys a discount, Fiction10. If you put Fiction10 as a discount code when you go push your order, you're gonna get 10% off of her shop. So very generous offer, and I'm really excited that she is providing that for you guys. And I requested a blind date with a book thriller genre, and this is the book that I got. It's called A Darkly Beating Heart by Lindsay Smith, and this book surprised me. It's not a book that I would have typically picked up on my own, but that's obviously the point of Blind Date with a Book. This book has very heavy Japanese influence. You're following a Japanese American character who has Japanese heritage, but she has grown up in the United States. She's very much American, and she's just in a very dark place for several reasons. And she actually is in Tokyo for her job, and she kind of finds this stone that transports her back in time to historical Japan. And you have samurais, and you kind of see the progression of this character, how she goes through her life and how she changes with her experience from time traveling back in Japan. So a very dark book, but also very entertaining, and I would recommend it if that's something that sounds good to you. It's not a very long book, so it's not a very big commitment, and you know, the words are pretty big, the spacing is good, so it was very easy to read this book and fly through it. So let me know. I haven't heard of this book or author before, so if you've read this book, please let me know your opinions about it. I'm really interested in hearing more about this book, because like I said, it was a good time, and something I wouldn't have normally picked up.
Well, and then we had another vlog for February. This was a leap year, so I had the idea that we could do a leap into a new genre, which was another book resolution that we did where we wanted to make more of an effort to read genres we don't typically read just to kind of spice things up. I decided to go with humor and I read Kate Kennedy's One in a Millennial. It was a half and half, like I feel like memoir, but also had a lot of humor infused into it. It was also nostalgic if you grew up in the 90s and 2000s. I was younger in the 90s, but I was in my college years, 20s for the 2000s portion. So there were some things I didn't necessarily identify with, but it was still a really fun read. You can also watch that. She'll have the link for that. I think you can only link so many videos. So I'm not sure how many she can link, but if you look on our page, you'll be able to see the leap year video as well.
The next book that I'm going to talk about is a book Jen and I did a vlog on where we leaped into a new genre. And the new genre that I leaped into was true crime. And I read The Ultimate Evil by Maury Terry, The Search for the Sons of Sam. And this was a very deep book. It introduces you to a lot of theories, and it does provide evidence to back up the theories, so they're not unfounded theories, but it is sort of the entrance to several rabbit holes you can go down. I found this book very fun to read, but I really didn't have the time because we were reading it for a vlog and we were coming up against a deadline of Leap Day, so I didn't have the time to really read and digest the book like I should and kind of look into some of these theories that he comes up with and really analyze the evidence he presents for it. So I am planning on maybe slowly going through this over time. I do read several books at a time, so I could have this one on in the back burner that I'm leafing through casually and kind of digesting the information more. So I'm gonna probably reread this over a long period of time and maybe come up with more opinions on it. But if you want more information about this book, then just check out our Leap Day vlog where we're leaping into a new genre. The next book I want to talk about is an audiobook that I listened to. It is the first book of a trilogy, and in this book you have this elite class of people, and they like to entertain themselves by hosting these events. These events are very brutal, they are very violent, and a lot of times the contestants in these events have to fight to the death. You're following a female main character who is entered into this event, and her weapon of choice in the very first event is a bow and arrow. So you are following a female main character who is compelled to compete in this event, and before the event though, she gets whisked off to a palace where she is pampered and she has an assistant that helps her get ready for this event. She has to do interviews and participate in parties so the viewers can get to know her and can kind of figure out all these contestants who they want to root for. There's also some love interest thrown in there, so this feels like a very complete story. So obviously you guys know which book I read by now. It's Powerless by Lauren Roberts. So all joking aside, I felt like this book was pretty good. I am kind of disappointed it wasn't more original. It does very much follow the same tropes as Hunger Games, but the ending is different, and I feel like the writing was good, and I think the second book is gonna take it in a separate direction, so I am probably going to check out the second book when it comes out. Now, on April 30th, she is releasing a novella called Powerful, and you're following the main female character, Peyton. You're following her best friend's point of view. I'm probably not going to read that. I'm really not big on just reading multiple point of views of the same event. I just don't feel like I gather enough new information from those. So I'm probably not going to read Powerful, but for all you guys that are anticipating this book, it is coming out on April 30th.
And then I ended February with 2 really quick reads. I did an ARC review. I'm not sure if that'll get posted before this video, but I read The Vacancy in Room 10. This was a psychological thriller. I had read On a Quiet Street by Serafina Novaglass, and I really liked that by her. So I was excited when I got the ARC. This one was very twisty. I didn't guess the ending, so I really enjoyed this one. It had great characters, a lot of twists. There were many things that I loved about this one. And I felt the ending just did the book a lot of justice. Book endings for me can really make or break a book, and I feel she did really well with the ending on this one. So if you want to know more information about this one, please check out the ARC review I did for this one.
The next two books that I am going to talk about are audiobooks. The first audiobook I'm going to talk about, I DNF'd, and that is The Coven by Harper L. Woods. I DNF'd this book at a third of the way in, and I just wasn't enjoying it. This book drew my interest because I saw it on Goodreads. It's going to have special editions coming out. It was a nominee for Best Romantasy in the Goodreads Choice Awards, and it was described as Vampires of J.R. Ward meets Witchy Goodness of Atlas 6 and Dark Academia Suspense of Ninth House. Now, I loved Ninth House, so that kind of got me, but I don't know. I was just not into this book. I was not into the main characters. I did not get to any spice parts or any of the parts where they actually, fell in love. But the talk between these two was just, in my opinion, a little raunchy. And it's just not my thing. I'm really not into romance. I am dabbling in romantasy because I just loved Fourth Wing and Iron Flame so much, and also Divine Rivals and Ruthless Vows. I just loved those books so much, and they're a little romantasy genre. So I'm dabbling in romantasy, but this book was just not for me. The last book I listened to is a very short audiobook by Robert R. Parker, and that is called The Widening Gyre. This is the 10th book in a series. I know the series goes on to like 40 books, and Robert B. Parker has since passed away, and Ace Atkins continues this series for him to this day. And you're following a Boston private detective. His name's Spencer. That's his last name, but he goes by Spencer. And he is just kind of, dispenses his own form of justice. And he protects innocent people and he goes after bad guys. These books were written in the early 80s. So they're very, old school. And to me, they're just kind of fun little reads. I'm slowly working my way through the series. Sometimes the mood hits me where I just want some old school private detective books, and these books are great.
And last but not least, I read something, again, from something I put on my book resolution. There were a bunch of books that I wanted to drag from 2023 from my TBR pile that I really wanted to read coming into 2024. I didn't want to just give up on them and leave them in 2023. There were a bunch that I really want to get to this year. One of which is by Karma Brown, What Wild Women Do. I read her first one, Recipe for a Perfect Wife, and I really felt like that one read as like a literary thriller, because you're really trying to find an answer to a potential murder in that one, is how I would describe it. When a woman moves into a house, finds a box that has like old cookbooks and recipes in it. And it might be the last book actually that I read that had recipes in it, because I'm pretty sure she had recipes in that one. And I read that one like in 2019. So she also ended up finding in those cookbooks, though, potential murder that might have happened in that house, and she starts digging into it. At the same time, she starts trying to be a perfect wife and like a 1950s housewife, and she was very mesmerized by all the recipes and the advice given to women at that time. And I really felt that was a great book. I love how that one ended as well. This one I wouldn't necessarily call a literary thriller. I would just say it's fiction. There is a little bit of a mystery, but you see a dual timeline. And again, the character goes with her husband to a vacation house. She goes on vacation to the Adirondack Mountains in New York, and it happens to be near a now run down property that she ends up finding out belonged to a woman in the 70s who was really part of the women's lib movement. She was really trying to help women. It was like a ranch for women to come and be more themselves, be empowered. The woman who had run that had disappeared. She had been a socialite using her money to help women, and she went by the name of Eddie. Well, she ended up disappearing and no one ever could. She was never found. And so that was kind of a mystery part of this. And you're also seeing it from Eddie's perspective in the 70s, right before she goes missing. I really enjoyed this one. I was a little disappointed once you find out what happens to Eddie, and obviously I don't want to spoil it, but there were lots of it I really liked. I liked the parallels between between Rowan, who is the woman in 2021, and Eddie back in 1975. And I loved how they showed some of the same things that women struggle with, but also the progress that has been made with what women can really accomplish. So there were a lot of great things about it. It was a very quick read. I do still like her first book better, but I did enjoy reading this one too. So that's how I ended my February. And I got to 8 books total, which I don't typically get to that many. It was just because I had vacation time, and Frida also had a big hand in that. So I was able to get to a very tall stack. I did put a tall stack on my March TBR, just hoping that the luck that I had in February continues into March. We'll see. I hope you guys had a very successful February as well. Let us know if you've read any of the ones that we've read. And until next time.